This is Ukrainian Polissya, the lost world where time stands still and only the quiet whisper of virgin forests can be heard. People very rarely set foot on these parts of the forest. Here, wolves, elk, hare, boar, and owls can still call themselves the masters of these woody trails. Polissya lies in huge dense lowlands extending over hundreds of kilometers and through several countries. In order to get to the Left Bank of Polissya, you should travel to the most northern part of Ukraine. Since 1999, this territory, more than 16,000 hectares, is protected by the Desnyanskiy-Starohutskiy National Nature Reserve Park. Our national park is the seventh one created in Ukraine. At first, there were plans to create a reserve park which would only cover the Starohutskiy Massif. At the time, it would have been the southern center of the Bryansk forests. But then it was decided to take the complexes around the Desnya River under protection as well. But these territories were acquired and intensively used as agricultural land. So the creation of a reserve park in such boundaries was next to impossible. That's how the idea to create a national natural reserve park came to be.
Ідея, щоб створити не заповідник, а національний природний парк.
The Desnyanskiy-Starohutskiy National Nature Reserve Park is the northernmost in Ukraine. It has features of a locality in the taiga or tundra. Large areas here occupied by pine forests with trees covered by green moss. Cane fruits with blueberries, cowberries, and cranberries are also a sign of the harsh northern latitudes. What are the distinctive features of these forests? In the spring, vast amounts of primrose flowers grow in the fields around the forests. Fragrant birthworts, anemones, and fleece scatter across the meadow like a colorful carpet. This is typical of the forest steppe zone. Here, there are nests of small northern owls, a shaggy owl and a pygmy owl, and bullfinch that migrate to Ukraine only in the winter. Their nests are on this land. The river fauna is also rich. In the floodplain of the Desna River, you can find many different forest creatures, among them otters, beavers, muskrats, and ermines. Just today, we were observing a mink running across the territory. This is a semi-aquatic animal, although it more often hunts underwater. Fish and small mammals are the basis of the mink's diet, which is considered to have the most valuable fur in the world. The mink lives in old abandoned hollows of beavers. As a rule, this animal chooses the most obscure shelters that are difficult to reach for predators. Seeing as a mink leads an active nocturnal way of life, you would be lucky to spot one during the daytime and observe its movements at a close range for an extended period of time. This is a unique meeting. For all of my 12 years of practice, we were not given such an opportunity to see a mink and capture it on film. Any wild animal is cautious. That's why you will only get a fleeting glimpse of it. The uniqueness is that the mink trusted us and we managed to take many photos of it. In these places, there are two competing mink species. There is a high probability that we saw a rare European mink, which is protected by the Red Book of Extinction. And this is a sign a wild beast has nobody to fear here except its natural enemies. Today, nature is successfully healing the consequences of irrational management. Meadows became covered with forests and shrubs appeared along the rivers. The life of flora and fauna is changing. The number of forest species is increasing. Birds that are accustomed to nesting in lakes with open shores are now looking for other breeding sites. For example, ducks. Trees and shrubs along the lake disturb them and the birds rarely choose these places as a habitat for their colonies. But this does not affect the number of feathered inhabitants of the park. 154 species of birds live and breed in the floodplain of the Desna River. Their unbelievable numbers can be seen in spring and autumn during their seasonal migratory flights. In this period, ornithologists of the National Nature Reserve Park register the flights of these feathered migrants. This gives them the opportunity to control the change in the number of one or another species and even judge the condition of these indigenous natural complexes. Birds are at the top of the food chain and can be an indicator of the state of the entire habitat. By the number of birds flying through this narrow corridor, we can draw conclusions about their number. For example, in the tundra, there they are dispersed and they are not so easy to count, but here they are concentrated and fly through a very narrow corridor. By the number of migratory birds, we can approximate how many chicks they took away and judge how healthy their offspring are. Usually the last migratory birds leave in November. This year, seasonal migration lasted until the end of December. In fact, the flocks are no longer flying. For the most part, they are lonely predators. Over several hours of observation during a full day, ornithologists counted up to 10 species of these migratory avian creatures.
В зимний период мы можем наблюдать как оседлых птиц, которые не улетают в места зимовки, так и птиц, которые прилетают сюда на зимовку.
In winter, we can observe both sedentary birds that do not fly away, as well as those who come here for the winter from more northerly regions.
Серого сорокопута. Они прилетают.
These are bullfinch and gray shrikes. They fly from the more northern latitudes of the taiga, where they nest.
Например, снегири, чечетки, а к нам они прилетают зимуют. И во время экскурсий.
During the observations, we can see the wintering flocks of several dozen of birds.
Стаи, которые могут достигать несколько десятков особей, даже до сотни, например.
As a rule, different kinds of passerine birds gather together and roam together as well.
Вместе собираются, вместе кочуют. Мы можем увидеть и большую синицу, и хохлатую синицу, и лазаревку, и бурголовую.
We can see here the chickadee and a tree creeper together.
Оползня в одной стае. К ним присоединяются часто желтоголовые корольки.
To survive a severe winter is much more likely in a friendly team. It is enough for one bird to notice the last remaining fruit on the tree. Then the whole flock immediately spots this and flies around the tree. They are also stronger as a flock when they have to fight off predators, particularly for small birds as goldcrests that weigh a mere 6 grams. Almost undetectable, a goldcrest gives itself away only by its peep. But in case of danger, the flock will hear it and will definitely fly to the rescue. This is just as humans in winter will not leave local inhabitants at the mercy of fate. In addition to feeders, birds are provided with such comfortable accommodation. Wooden nests for smaller birds are hung in trees in the forest long before springtime comes around. We hang such bird nests. We do it in the winter so that sedentary birds, such as tits, can find their nests where their offspring hatch earlier than the spring. We check those nests that we placed earlier in the winter so that we can remove them if there are any parasites in them that are harmful to the birds. The park rangers check the nests from time to time. It is necessary that they will repair the nests and monitor the settlement. However, they always abide by the principle of non-intervention in the natural processes. Nature regulates those processes on its own. Just recently, there was a dry grove of an alder tree in this place, but then the beavers came here. The largest rodent in Ukraine is able to chuck thick trunks of alder trees in order to build a dam. In addition, they do not work alone. They have the support of their large family, parents, and 2 generations of offspring. The whole friendly team works hard to ensure that the water does not erode the dam and destroy the silent backwater. Now there are only dried up alder tree chunks, but an open water area formed, which is very suitable habitat for ducks. But creating conditions for the life of other animals, the beavers do not forget about their own interests. After all, the work they did to create their marsh was not in vain. Sedge, bulrush, typha, and other marsh vegetation are the most suitable for their nutrition.
Ці рослини не глибоко мають
These plants have a shallow root system and a high content of starch. The most delicious tree for beavers is aspen, and most likely they will become their main food source in the winter. There were also small willows that they had chewed up and also left behind as a reservoir for the future. A beaver can easily cope with an already felled tree. The beavers chew the tree into pieces of equal length and sends them across the river to the homestead. In this case, this is a small hill in the middle of the backwater. Beavers dig a hole below this dam. Then they build a shelter to protect themselves and their families from predators. The fact is that it is impossible for a wolf and a fox to overcome this water barrier, but this is the way beavers build housing if they settle on flat banks or in swamps. If they preferred a steep bank, they would dig straight into the ground. From an economic point of view, what is happening is disastrous. A few cubic meters of valuable wood just rot in a swamp, but this is the organization of a marsh ecosystem.
Але це так влаштована болотна екосистема. Вона переживає всякі періоди.
It is experiencing different periods of development and decline.
Вони виїдають всі запаси.
In about 10 to 15 years, beavers will destroy the entire eating stock in this place and then leave. The dam will collapse, and the water will fall, and again the same alder forest will grow. This is the natural formation cycle of marshes. This is something that the national park protects, like any other natural process. The formation of swamps and any other natural cycle in the national park are given away to nature. The local inhabitants live strictly by its laws. The park staff is only watching and trying to protect this natural oasis from any harmful intervention. This is the way they preserve and renew varieties of plants and animals, and at the same time the unique beauty of the landscape. The valley of the Polissya River is typical of the wildlife of these places. On this stretch of its flow, it has a winding channel. Sometimes it is divided into sleeves and then converges again. Each turn and each pit creates a special condition for life of certain organisms. When the channel turns, on the one hand it brushes the shore, forming a cliff. We see how in this section there are holes with a certain kind of inhabitant. On the opposite side of the river, sand settles and already a completely different species holes up in it. Where the river makes a steep turn, the bottom becomes deeper and the flow is slower. Thus a whirlpool is created. Here there are certain species of fish. Between the whirlpools are different sleeves, but the flow gets faster. The water is enriched with oxygen, and in this part of the channel, habitats are created for completely different species of fish. When the river flows along its natural course, the river system is much richer. So far, humans are not interfering with this natural process. To make life easier, they try to conquer the river. Trying to create more comfortable conditions for resource management, the channel is straightened. As a rule, this leads to the water becoming stagnant. The river is overgrown with duckweed and then slowly dies. This section of the Polissya River is unique. Here you can see exactly how alive and different the river can be if its channel has full freedom. You can also see what kind of flora can grow in the valley of this river. Even in a winter landscape, an experienced botanist's eye notes unique vegetation. For example, primrose not only resisted the snow covering, but also adapted to the breeding in this season. Its strong, thick stem will not break even under strong winds. In the feeders, primrose has seeds that can serve as food for birds. Flying to such feeders, birds without knowing promote the reproduction of this plant. The plant specially adapted itself for the birds to carry the seeds as far away as possible. It is done very simply. Seeds are different in thickness of their shells. In some it is thin and digestible. In others the shells are so thick that they cannot be digested, and this helps the seed survive even in the bird's stomach. After that, with the bird's droppings, it can appear in the far corners. Thus the plants adapted to the distribution of their seeds.
Не перетравлюються в шлунку пташки. Таким чином рослини адаптувалися до розповсюдження свого насіння.
A third part of the wild flora of the Sumy Oblast is concentrated on the Desnya section of the national park. This is about 600 species of higher plants. They are rare species listed in the Red Book of Extinction and relict plants that have survived since the glacial period. River floodplains, picturesque meadows, these are places accessible to those who, instead of a beach holiday, prefer to pick mushrooms, berries, walks through thick forests, and unity with wildlife. So, travel and discover with us the undiscovered Ukraine.